All right, so welcome back to Macroeconomics, tackling chapter 10. So we're going to skip that chapter on savings and investment and stuff like that, right? It's kind of just a lot of definitions, and it's not that interesting or technical. And since we're crunched on time here, I think it's important for us to move on to, one of the more important theoretical concerns here, which is, talking about and defining what money is, right? So, we know what money is, we use it all the time, right? But the technical term of it, right, is an asset that can be used to make purchases. So, what are the examples of this, right? We're going to have a video that talks about a lot of the different examples. But, some examples would be, obviously coins, right? That we've got, pennies and dimes and nickels and quarters, right? We've got paper currency, $1, $5, $10, $20, $100, $50. Used to have $2, just like with the coins. There's a 50-cent and a $1 piece. We don't use them too often. Checking account balances, right? Those are also types of money. And then, the book talks about how, Bitcoin and other digital cryptocurrencies aren't types of money, but I differ with them. I think they are. So Bitcoin and, cryptocurrencies, I would consider to be a type of money, but we will talk about that in a bit. And there's a cool video that I'll send out to everybody, and hopefully we'll have a discussion about it on Monday. So, money at its core, right, it has three principal uses. So what are those three uses, right? Well, the first one is that it's a medium of exchange, right? I can use it to buy other things. The second one that we have is that it's a unit of account. Things are priced in it. Or they can be priced in there, right? So you can convert it easily. And then lastly, it's a store of value. So why is money useful? Well, money eliminates what we think of as, it makes barter unnecessary. And what is barter? This is the trading of goods and services directly. So what do we mean by directly, right? So, the book uses this great metaphor where it says, to avoid the need for a hungry tailor to run into a freezing baker. So the baker is going to have extra bread to give the tailor's going to have extra clothes to give the baker. So this is, what is this? This is what we call a double coincidence of wants. Right? The tailor just so happened to want food. The baker just so happened to want some clothing. So, there's a type of money. So money will often be either public or private. And so the reason why I put, Bitcoin and other, and other cryptocurrencies in that other color is because, it's kind of somewhere in between private and public money, right? Closer to private money. So what are you talking about, Chris? What's this private money? Because if we look at the back of, a dollar that we have, what does it say on it? It says, this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private, right? So this is public and private money. So what if we're talking about private money, right? What about just private money? Well, just private money is money that's issued and controlled by a government or some sort of entity, right? So it's, public money. Public money is the one. Public money issued and controlled by a government. Whereas private money is essentially, so it's any money that's not centrally controlled. So, there's a town in New York, Ithaca, New York. Ithaca. And they have money called Ithaca hours, right? Where it's worth $10, which is the average hour of work there. And so, essentially they'll pay you in these Ithaca hours, right? And, when this book was written in 2017, 1,600 people had, participated, had earned and spent this currency. There's a regional system of private money that is used by the UK, Australia, and the Kiwis in New Zealand. Right? They use this electric money for buying and selling goods and services called the LETS system. So the LETS, the local electronic trading system. And then lastly, right, we've got Bitcoin and other virtual currencies, right? So, new Bitcoin is issued through new currency is issued through the settlement of payment activity. That's usually done by like the banking. Settling of payments / verification process done by, it used to be done by computers, now it's done by, servers, right? And this is called mining. Bitcoin, has been around for a long time. You know, it was you know, less than $1 for a long time, right? And then, you know, it didn't cost a lot. Then at one point it spiked up to, you know, nearly, you know, $20,000, right? But then it crashed down to, you know, 350. You know, at the time of this book, it was at 3,500. You know, right now I think it's like 12,000. So, you know, part of the argument about, you know, why Bitcoin isn't money is that it's not a sound store of value. You know, the price of it is too erratic. The other argument is that, you know, it's not commonly accepted. You know, why did the price of Bitcoin spike in the first place? You know, because of the existence of the Silk Road, you know, and the dark web and you know, the ability to do black market activities online anonymously, right? That you know, that was kind of how Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies got their start. So while it may be commonly accepted online, you know, you've been able to use it at overstock.com for a long time and other places, right? But, you know, a lot of, you know, there's like no place in town that you can use it, right? I mean, I talked to Dave at Bean Broker about, you know, taking it. He's like, how many people are actually going to use it? And I was like, yeah, you have to find. But I mean, there are coffee shops and other places in Denver and Fort Collins that take it. You know, I've used it to pay for stuff, definitely like San Francisco and other kind of like, you know, very techy places, right? But, you know, for the most part, it's not like $1, right? But I mean, these days, you got places that are saying, oh, we're cashless. We only take cards, which, you know, I think should be illegal. Like, it seems like it should be illegal, but for whatever reason, you know, they get away with it, right? So who the heck knows what's going to happen? Okay, so how do we define currency, right? So let's talk about measuring. How do we define money, rather? Measuring money. Currency is just a type of money. And so the first type of money that we have is what's called M1, right? The first measure of money, M1. And so this is going to be all of the cash. This is going to be all the demand deposits. So, you know, your checking deposits, other checkable deposits. And then, you know, we have to mention it here, but nobody uses them anymore, but traveler's checks. And so back in 2017, I'm pretty sure this was all in millions, right? There was 2 million in traveler's checks. There was 565.4 million in other checkable. There was 1.474 billion in demand. There was 1.486 billion in currency. And so when we add all that stuff up, that gives us an M1 total of 3,528.1 million bucks. So that's our most narrow range defining in terms of money. M2 is all of M1, right? So it's going to be that 3,528.1. And then it's also all of your savings deposits. So that's 9,028,900,000. Small denomination time deposits. So these are any kind of 3, 6, 9 month CDs that people might buy. So small denomination time deposits. This is fairly small, right? This is $364 million. And then lastly, these were very huge before the crisis, but a lot of people got burned on them. A lot of retirement accounts have money in these, right? Money, market, mutual funds. And so there's $680 million in there. We add all those things up, and that gives us M2, which is $13,602,000,000. So M2 is always going to be larger than M1 because M2 includes M1 in it. So how do we get to this system of currencies and checking and savings? And then there's also an M3 that talks about credit. It's going to be all your M2 plus some of your credit, right? So how do we get there? Well, essentially, we start with some government. So we're going to kind of like take a journey through the creating a banking system. So how does this actually work, right? Well, so let's say we've got the Republic of Gorgonzola. And so they're going to issue 1 million of their currency, which they're going to call guilders. 1 million guilders. And you'll also see, so we're just making up this term, right? But you'll see this abbreviation LCU. That means local currency unit. So what's the LCU of the United States? It's the dollar. What's the LCU of England? It's the pound. It's the LCU of France and Germany. It's the euro. So the LCU for this fictional Republic of Gorgonzola is going to be guilders. We're told we're issuing this currency. It's spent on government services, so the people get this in terms of paychecks, right? We've got banks that are created to store the cash. And in a situation with no interest, how do the banks make money? They make money by charging depositors fees, right? So the banks earn profits by charging the depositors fees. This used to be really bad, especially with overdraft fees and stuff like that, right? It's gotten better, and then it got worse. So if we were to look at this in terms of a balance sheet, which you all are gonna learn to love in your accounting classes, right? If we look at this in terms of a balance sheet, well, a balance sheet is just that. It's going to balance the left and the right side of it, right? My assets are going to equal my liabilities. So my assets, that's something I own, right? If you have a car, that's an asset. If you have a credit card, that's a liability. That's something that you owe. So your assets and your liability, right? So we're going to have assets. We're going to have deposits here in terms of everybody is going to deposit their 1 million guilders. So we've got deposits. And we've got, essentially, so they owe all the people. The people can at any time come and take that money back, right? And what do they have in their vault? They've got 1 million paper guilder dollars, right? That the bank created. And so right now, as it stands, this is a situation of what we would call 100% reserve banking. Right? Every dollar, every gorgonzola, every G deposited is held by the bank, in a safe or whatever, right? This is 100% reserve situation. So what, bank reserves, we can define those as cash or similar assets held by banks. But this cash that's in the bank vaults, right? Is not part of the money supply. And so what does that mean by not being part of the money supply, right? That means it's unavailable for use in payments. All of these bank deposits, any bank deposits that we do have available for use in transactions are a part of the money supply. All right, so bankers realize that inflows and outflows of guilders, from their vaults, think of like Gringotts or whatever, right? Leave some guilders unused. Some guilders unused, right? So what do they find? They find that, only 10% of the deposits are really needed to cover those transactions. And so as a result, what can they do? They can take the 100 minus 10 is 90%, right? They can take the 90% remainder that can be lent to borrowers for a fee. And that fee is called interest. And so by making loans, the banks put more money in the economy, increasing the money supply. So let's look at that balance sheet one more time. So remember, they've got deposits of 1 million guilders. But they only need to keep in actual currency in their vault 100K. That means they can do what? They can take the rest, they can loan out 900,000 guilders. So this rate of the deposits that they have to keep as cash is called the reserve deposit ratio. Very, very original name, right? Reserve deposit ratio is defined as the bank reserves divided by total deposits. So what would it be here? It would be the bank reserves, which is the 100,000 cash, over the total deposits, which is the million. So this is going to be what? 0.10. Whenever our fractional reserve ratio is less than 100%, less than 1, then the system holds less reserves than dollars. Sorry, than deposits. Makes a lot more sense. Finish the rest of the word. Whenever that's the case, what do we call this? We call this a fractional reserve banking system. So all banking systems outside of the Islamic world are fractional reserve banking systems. The Islamic world, they actually can't charge interest because it's against the Quran. And so they have to do different things in order to make loans and stuff like that. So they have a different banking system than we do. All right, let's go ahead and take a video break. All right, after that video break, so what happens when they do this, right? Well, they're going to go ahead and they're going to loan. So the banks in a fractional reserve system, right? They loan, 900,000 guilders out to farmers. And what do farmers do? They buy supplies with it, right? They buy new tractors and 4x4s. They buy supplies. And better feed and irrigation systems and whatever, fences, I don't know. And so what's that going to do, right? Well, so they loan the 900,000. The 900,000 is used to buy supplies, right? What happens when the 900,000 is used to buy supplies, right? That 900,000, for supplies is then deposited. by, the business, Ace Hardware and, Walmart and, whatever, right? The GMC dealership, wherever these farmers are spending their money, right? They deposit that there in this bank. And so now what's the balance sheet look like? I'm glad you asked. We've got assets, liabilities. So now we actually see an increase in that liabilities, right? Because there's more deposits in the bank. So the liabilities have gone up. So they're now 1,900,000. While the assets we're going to get $900,000 of cash that they just put in their vaults, right? So they had 100,000 before. Plus the 900,000 that the farmers are depositing, right? And now they've also got, what do they have on here? They've got some liabilities in terms of they've made some loans to these farmers, and those loans are assets, right? At some point, they're going to be paid that back. And so now we once again see that the banks are holding, excessive reserves on deposits, right? In terms of the reserves that the banks are holding, the cash is almost half of the deposits, right? So what are the reserves? What's the reserve ratio right now? Equal to 1 million over 1,900 million, right? Which is, again, almost I'm going to say 0.46 or something like that, right? Almost half. And, the reserve ratio, the required reserve ratio right? Because there's a certain minimum that's set by the Federal Reserve, which we probably won't get to until class on Monday. The required reserve ratio, we know is 10%, right? So that means that the banks are holding these two things together, mean that the banks are holding excessive reserves. What the banks do when they're holding excessive reserves, they're going to go ahead and they're going to lend them out, right? So with deposits of 1.9 million dollars, right? What would they need for reserves? 0.10 times 900,000 is going to be what? 1,900,000. So they can go ahead and loan out the difference between the 1 million that they have in cash, right? So the cash that they have right now, reserves, right? That's going to be the 1 million gillers. What they need to hold is the 190,000 gillers, and so they're going to go ahead and they're going to lend out this 810,000 giller extra amount of money. And so they're going to keep on doing this and keep on doing this and keep on doing this, right? So I'll find an example that works through the Excel, and I'll put it in the playlist if you guys are curious about it. But essentially, this is a geometric series. What does that mean? That means that every time that it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So we know that at the end of the day, at the end of the whole thing, the expansions of loans and deposits stops when the reserves are, always left at 10% of the deposits. So if we've got 1 million Gillers available as reserves, then that means that deposits are going to stabilize at 10,000 or 10 million Gillers, 10 times that. The balance sheet will look like so we'll have, a total assets equaling the liabilities at the end of the day. Wait. Yeah. 1 plus 9 is 10. Yep. So when we begin with 1 million Gillers in cash, and we end with a money supply that's 10 times more, right? That's 10 million Gillers. All right, so we'll talk about money creation at the beginning of class on Tuesday. So don't forget to take your midterm. I'll go ahead and prune some questions out of there and make sure, that it only covers the material that we went over. Best of luck to everybody. You got 2 tries on it. Open notes, send me an email if there's any problems or anything. Have a great weekend.